Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Sorry for the rough opening there, folks. The Rumble channels were not connected, so I was trying to get them fired up on the fly here at the beginning of the program again. There was something wonky going on with the streaming software. When I set these broadcasts up early in the day, they don't seem to hold, so I have to set them up again on the fly when we go live. But we have a lot of stuff to share with you tonight. In a few minutes, Jeff Evely from Veterans for Freedom will be along to help us make sense of a couple of big stories. What's going on with this Save the Children convoy, because a lot of freedom groups have come out publicly with some concerns about that, which I'm sure many of you may be aware of. He'll kind of give us some perspective on that. Also, this Yaroslav Hunka story, Nazi fallout, Trudeau scandal. He'll help us, I think, navigate our way through that as well tonight. And then later in the broadcast, another person who is becoming a regular here on Maverick News, Joseph M. Lenard, Republican, MAGA guy, political analyst, author. He'll be along to discuss last night's GOP presidential debate and Donald Trump's separate event. And we'll discuss who maybe came out on top last night. Who won the debate, or did Donald Trump come out on top even though he wasn't at the debate? We'll have all that and a whole lot more. You're not going to want to miss this one because, folks, tonight we are, I would say, and I've said this before, but we're at war. That's my belief. We are actually at war tonight. It's an information war. at this point here in Canada. But make no mistake, we are at war. The real difficulty here is it isn't clear who the real enemy is, because in some respects, it's our own prime minister, I think, and the sitting government. But at the same time, we have foreign powers engaging in this information war as well, and I'll show you evidence of that tonight. And then we'll try to wrap our heads around it and figure out what the heck we're supposed to do. It's confusing and it's disturbing. It saddens me that we're at this place, but maybe the way out is to focus on the truth. So stay with me. I'll be right back, and we will start to try to make some sense out of things that seem senseless.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Good evening, Jeff Evely. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing good. How about yourself, Rick?
So I am stressed right the heck out.
Yeah, I'm used to it, I guess.
Yeah. And that's why we need you here tonight. In fact, just hang on a second here. I'm going to get this other feed rocking here. This stupid streaming software is just... There we go. Jeff,
yeah, it's a juggling act, I know.
It is, when you have to try to produce and talk and think.
Yeah.
It's like chewing gum and walking at the same time.
I'm having particular issues with that last one lately, it seems. Thinking? Nah.
So first up, before we get into all this, the bigger story, which I think is, like I said, tonight, I think we are at war.
Yep.
And I'm trying to make sense of this, Jeff, because it's an information war. But my God, what happened in Parliament, our foolish, careless, irresponsible, spineless Prime Minister has plunged us into this position with what's happened with Yaroslav Hunka. We'll get into that, but let's talk about this Save the Children convoy first, because I know a lot of freedom groups have been expressing concern about people's safety surrounding all of this. And I know Veterans for Freedom, which is your organization, issued a joint media release, I think today. Can you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, we were receiving a lot of concerns. Our three organizations that published the joint statement that was Veterans for Freedom, Police on Guard, and Mama Bears around potential bad actors in the movement and just the safety of the event itself. So, yeah, there's the statement there.
Okay, and what are the concerns? I mean, I've focused on them here over the last week. It's a painful thing to talk about.
Yep.
I take no joy in it. Mm-hmm. But we've certainly highlighted it here. So can you explain what this media release is? What are the main concerns?
So the main concerns, as far as I can perceive, I talked about this morning on the Veterans for Freedom live stream as well. The thing is, they're not transparent, first of all, so that's a red flag. They never state publicly what their plans are. We don't really know where their funding comes from. A lot of the rhetoric is very cryptic, could be perceived by an unbiased observer as perhaps making, certain invocations of a revolution, this kind of thing. And the real concern that I had, that I expressed this morning, was stemming from a meeting that I went to. So they have these meetings in person, and they don't state any of their plans publicly on the internet, on Facebook. And they'll say this in their videos too. Like, we can't say what we're going to do here on Facebook, but something big is coming, that kind of thing. And I went to one of these meetings and I heard the plan. So the plan is to take over the financial district in Toronto. And when the police come in to remove them, they're going to bring in an even bigger crowd to surround the police. Now, I don't really believe that they have the support or the ability to pull something out like this off. I'm not even sure we can say that the Canadian military at this particular moment in our history would be able to pull something like that off. But the thing is the question whenever we're planning, and I spent a lot of time planning in my career, is, and then what? So when you surround the police, what are you going to do then? And generally the deflection is, well, they can't arrest us all. But of course, we had a trucker convoy in February of 2022. And we saw what happened there. I mean, that was probably 100,000 protesters, maybe 10,000 police, and just look at what happened. The media smeared us as Nazis and Dukes of Hazzard flag carrying, ski mask wearing fatsos, and they've stuck to that line. It's not like there's been any retractions. And so as far as the media is concerned, a racist Nazi convoy is on its way to Toronto. The plan is to surround the police. And so, I mean, if you do that, you're going to get arrested at best. This is an escalation. And that's a bad idea, because this is a situation where they're deliberately kettling people into a powder keg, and all it's going to take is one match. And this is exactly the kind of thing that a bad guy would want us to do if we were, engaged in a psychological warfare, and there's a psyop being inflicted on us. Just set the conditions and let humans do what they do best and tear each other apart. It's the conditions leading up to this, regardless of intent, that just, an unbiased observer could look at this and say, or should look at this and say, this is dangerous, and the inevitable outcome here is violence.
I agree. Simple as that. And they've been very dark online. You're not seeing very much talk on social media about this, but we know they're out there because they do surface every once in a while and post videos, so you can sort of see where some of them are moving. And there is a convoy that was coming from the west to the east, and I think they got into Ontario today, from what I saw online. So this is absolutely a concern, and not just for the people going to participate in this protest, but for the police as well, and for the general public and anybody that might just be in the area. This is absolute safety first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a cynical guy. I advocate for cynicism, and I look at something like this, and you got to ask. I mean, if someone were behind this who was trying to wrap us up in a nice, neat little bow and, hand us off to the guards at the Gulag Archipelago, what would they be doing differently?
Yeah. And this has the potential to honestly destroy the freedom movement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know they've been engaged in the same tactics, the same propaganda rhetoric the entire time, and smearing the whole movement as bigoted, and you know all the phobes, all the modern excommunications, as Douglas Murray calls it, and the um, the thing is that you know they've engaged in this propaganda war the entire time, and they've inflicted it on like the entire freedom movement broadly, right? They call us Nazis. So um, the thing is that once we give them this gift of a violent protest or a riot or worse, then they get to associate that with anybody involved in the freedom movement and effectively marginalize, you know, if not the whole thing, then the bulk of it. That's for sure. It's going to make it a lot harder for us to advocate for freedom.
Right. So that's a pretty simple message. We probably don't need to take it any further than that because it's just straight up some concerns out there that I think are very justified from everything that I've been seeing and hearing and stuff that we've had on the program. People openly talking about stuff right here that makes me feel, yeah,
That idea.
yeah, really bad idea. So, yeah, folks, take some good advice. So let's
Please.
let's move on and talk about some other insanity. This,
Can we?
oh my God, I, where do we begin with this tonight? I'm seeing such a reaction to this at home and abroad, internationally. A lot of this is true. I don't know who to be upset with. It's we have Yaroslav Hunka, Nazi, honored in Parliament. Everybody claps for him. Everybody's making excuses. Let's start there. What's your take on that? Who is to blame from your perspective?
Ultimately, the prime minister is responsible. Obviously, it would be the PMO, PCO who vet these people, and they have an entire intelligence apparatus and security apparatus at their disposal. So, absolutely no excuses for this. Don't buy this scapegoat operation. It's just the latest scapegoat operation against Rota because. Yeah, he does not absolutely like safety and security trump all. Okay. Just because you're the speaker doesn't mean you get to throw security to the wind and just invite whomever you want with no kind of background check or clearance. That's absurd.
So I agree with that. I think the prime minister has to resign. I think that immediately accept full responsibility for it to take the weight off the country, because it seems to me, Jeff, that he's not only just shifting the blame onto the speaker, but onto ordinary Canadians, and he's letting the entire country take the fall. This is a disaster and dangerous.
Kind of like what a bad guy would do if he were working for the other side in this war. Yeah, I mean, we're aware because of the CSIS leaker, the heroic CSIS leaker, that China has been interfering in our democracy for some time now. I think this has been going on a hell of a lot longer, you know, even than the leak would indicate, definitely since before the 90s, at least then. There was the Sidewinder report at that time. And we know that Trudeau's riding in Papineau there received, you know, the bulk of its donations, I believe, from people with Chinese names in BC. So they're clearly funding them, and there, you know, there are all kinds of links, and Andy Lee's been doing a great job exposing them. And this is part of the Chinese Communist Party strategy, the blue, gold, yellow strategy. You know, blue for cyber, gold for financial, and yellow for all the blackmail and bribery that they engage in. So the strategy is elite capture. That's what we call it in intelligence circles. You basically turn the state, the elites, the people running our institutions against the population turns against the state, pit all the ethnicities off one another and subdivide us down into smaller and smaller groups to pit us off each other, so that we'll be too busy fighting each other to really pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. And we'll essentially just implode like Sri Lanka did, and China probably did that with the WEF running interference for them, because it is just a proxy for the CCP as far as I can tell. So that appears to be the strategy. And people talk about, like, you know, fifth generational warfare and full spectrum warfare, but it's really nothing new. I mean, Sun Tzu wrote about this in The Art of War in the 5th century BC. He said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So you can just implode a state and they'll own us. We'll be conquered without them even so much as having to fire a shot. It's too convenient again. That we're at the same time that we're giving the world plenty of reason to think that we have a Nazi problem here in Canada. That is, by the way, the Marxist mass line attack strategy. That's what they use, is mass line. That's something that Mao Zedong is credited with developing, but it's really more like Hegel. So. In the mass line, they just call the reactionaries. That's their terminology. We teach it in our universities now to call right wingers reactionaries. But the reactionaries are basically anybody who stands up to the Marxist takeover. And they just the way that they deal with them, according to their own literatures, they just call them Nazis. So we see that all over the place, where anybody who stands up to any Marxist anywhere, they just call us Nazis. So it's a little too perfect for that narrative, don't you think, that we're applauding a Nazi in the House of Commons? I think it's going to add a lot of it's a gift to the left, to the Marxists, to make their jobs a lot easier for them, at the same time that we're alienating ourselves from India, who, if there's anybody in that region of the world who can rival the Chinese Communist Party, it is India. They're nuclear, and not only that, and they have a serious military, but not only that, they're, by the way, English-speaking, British, Commonwealth, capitalist, democratic, like... that they should be our number one ally. And if you really want to ship our manufacturing and steel off to a developing country, it probably should have been there. But for some reason, we're in bed with China. Well, I mean, I think we know the reason. And so
tonight, because they found one Nazi in Parliament, it seems like we now have a Nazi under every rock and behind every tree. And the entire country is being, I think, conflated into a Nazi state. He
did apologize on behalf of the whole country, didn't he?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
How convenient.
Yeah. So looks like they're trying to make it stick.
And then you go to social media and you see stuff like this. This is Jim Ferguson, UK. I'm really not familiar with his work, but here he is saying it's probably helpful for people to understand why honoring Nazi Waffen-SS and war criminal Yaroslav Hunka in the Canadian Parliament is so repulsive. And then, of course, and rightly so, he's singling out Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, and going to town on her. And then he says, 5,000 Nazis were allowed to live in Canada after World War II. Is it time to hunt them down? Well, I would say that probably 4,950 are probably dead at this point.
And what are you going to do? Are you going to extradite Hunka? He's 98.
Yeah, I mean, he's able to get up and walk around, but the guy is 98 years old.
Yeah.
So how...
imprison him in The Hague? I don't see that happening. So, yeah, this is something I think that wasn't really even on my radar before all of this, but I've been kind of digging up some of the history, and yeah, we have a very kind of mixed history when it comes to this, and that is the nature, I think, of history. Is it is by default a bit of a whitewash, and I mean, yeah, we won the Second World War and the First World War, and that was all heroic and valiant and all of those things. But the Germans kind of got used to waving the white flag on Christmas Day and coming out and having tea with the Brits, and then the Canadians showed up, and when they did that, we shot them. So. How many prisoners did the West Novies take in their campaign in Italy?
Yeah.
0, right? It's like, yeah, I know you got your hands up, but I just marched here from the ocean, so I need your boots. There's a very dark side to our history that we probably just don't focus on. It's uncomfortable.
Yes. Yeah. But, the reality is we sent a lot of soldiers into battle in World War II to fight against the Nazis and spilled a lot of blood. And we can't forget that. So I don't see that Canada is a Nazi country. We might have a corrupt government that is. How do we reconcile this? I mean, obviously we're at war. We're in the middle of an information war. In fact, tonight we're seeing, because of this situation with India. In fact, here's the headline: cyber attacks launched on Canada tonight, apparently from Indian hackers.
Great.
But what the heck are we? How do we make sense of this? I mean, I can't. It's hard to identify the. It's like Trudeau's the enemy. But wait a minute.
How come we don't see those? How come we don't see those headlines for the CCP for China? Okay, because we've been under constant attack from them in cyber. It's part of their strategy. It's the blue, gold, yellow.
Yeah.
Right. There's a reason. So yeah, I think that this is the next battlefield in the information battle space. Is we're going to alienate India, who should be our strongest ally, probably, other than the United States right now. I mean, well, we have our Five Eyes partners and stuff like that too, so they would be closer allies. But India has intelligence sharing agreements with the United States and the UK. We don't have one with them. We should be doing everything we can to cozy up to India. They also just overtook China as the world's largest population. And they understand the threat. They understand, the threat coming from China, because the Gurkhas are always kicking the CCP's ass in the mountains of Nepal. The thing is, like, they're in a difficult place as a consequence of their geography, and so they kind of balance these things, and so they're a BRICS nation, but they also understand that China is not their ally per se. Be great if they were our ally.
So who's the enemy? Is it
China?
It's China, but
no.
Trudeau, like the government.
Yeah, he's with them.
So what the hell do we do then? That's my dilemma, right? What are we going to do?
It's a political solution. It's political warfare. That's a part of the mass line. I don't know if I said that already, but it's a mass line attack, a Marxist mass line attack. So, yeah, it's a political warfare. We got to step into that battle space. I think a lot of people have good ideas when it comes to, especially, getting out to these town council meetings, running for municipal office, running for provincial, running for federal. Get involved in that political battle space. Get up your MP's ass. Like, confidence vote is trending. Jagmeet Singh wants his pension, so I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. And the NDP, they're flat broke. I mean, they can't even afford to campaign for an election. So everybody knows, like, if it goes to an election, that the Conservatives are going to win right now. But we need to get up their asses, especially when it comes to the inquiry. We need a full, open, transparent, thorough public inquiry into just how deep the CCP's tentacles go into our institutions.
So
before we go to an election, because who knows how secure the election is? We don't even know that.
I mean, this is just it. This is for Canada a disaster. I feel like the country is on the edge of disintegrating. And Canada has been in a fragile state for a long time anyway because of separatist sentiments and movements and all kinds of regional issues that just have in the past threatened to tear us apart. And now all of this. And when you go to on social media, I mean, I'm seeing post after post like this. This is Chrystia Freeland, a huge liability to the country. But it's again, it's not. She's not taking responsibility. So it's open season on Canada. Now the entire country is being painted as a Nazi nation, and I don't think that's fair. But this has given the ammunition to war hawks in maybe Russia to paint Canada as an absolute target. They want to denazify Ukraine. Well, now Canada's a Nazi country too. So I guess it's open season on us to come to war here. I'm not in favor of that war in Ukraine, but I see how the narrative is being spun, and help me make sense of that.
Well, again, it's a gift to the left, to the Marxists, right? It supports the narrative that we're Nazis and Russia is under attack by Nazis, paints us as the bad guys, and puts us on the back foot. And that's what we should not be doing right now. We should be going on the front foot. Like, we got to engage in this fight. We got to fight back and get off the defense, go on the offense a little bit here. And of course, I'm talking about lawful, peaceful, civic action, all that stuff. I'm talking about rhetoric primarily. We got to mix it up in that ideological battle space. And, it's just a matter of calling a spade. I advocate for radical candor, just speak that unmitigated truth as harshly as you possibly can. The truth hurts, but there's a method to my madness because it's also disarming. And so that's what you will find, especially since these people are cowards, is that if you just really nail them down, like get them on the spot and nail them down with the unmitigated harsh truth, then they fall apart. And it's part of the mass line as well, intersectionality is Marxism. It's a Marxist praxis. It's theory put into practice. Applied to us for the purpose of negating reality. Then, you can put your little software bug into the mind of the mind from which truth has been vanquished and write your own reality. So the answer to it is philosophy. It's sophistry. It's ultimately sophistry. And the answer to that is philosophy. So bone up on your Aristotle, especially logical fallacies, because everything they say is a logical fallacy. Pierre Poilievre gets up and calls on Trudeau to give an apology, and he stands up and says 3 of your MPs met with Christine Anderson. Now, I'm not putting those two things in the same category, but let's just say you're a Marxist and you do, and put the meeting with Christine Anderson in the same category as giving a standing ovation to a Nazi veteran. If that's the case, then it's still illogical, his response, right? It's known as the Tukoqui logical fallacy. It means, and you as well, or it's the appeal to hypocrisy. Well, Pierre Poilievre can be a hypocrite and he can still say true things. It does nothing to address the central claim that that Trudeau did something wrong. It's like, you say to Trudeau, you did something wrong, and then he says, you did something wrong. And then, that is the end of the conversation. Basically, he doesn't address the wrong that he did. He just said, you did it too. So, like as if that makes it okay.
Yeah. And I see that what's being done online is a lot of stuff from World War II being, displayed and then conflated into what's going on here in Canada. Just even pictures. It's at the point now where all you need to do is throw a picture of something from World War II up online, and it seems to be connected to Canada. It's that kind of conflation. It's driving me a little bit crazy. Now I know that we did bring in some people from Europe, Germany, Ukraine, other countries. Some of them were war criminals, and I know in the 80s we went through a whole series of investigations where some of these war criminals were rooted out and taken to trial, many of them very, very elderly at that time. And I covered some of that as a journalist back in those days. But now, here again, it seems like there's a kernel of truth, and then there's a whole bunch of propaganda wrapped around it now that is just going viral globally. Mm-hmm. How much damage is this doing to the country? Can Canada survive this?
Yeah, we can survive it, but not without effort. Just like anything, I guess. Yeah, we obviously got to get this puke out of the way. He's not on our side. He's working for the other side. This is a big setup. It's like what they did to the trucker convoy on a national scale. So I don't
international.
think it's, yeah, international. What I mean is, they painted the trucker convoy as Nazis, but now what they've done is they've painted the entire country as Nazis.
Yes.
And it's for the same purpose of crushing us like they did to the trucker convoy.
Yeah. And it's not just truth. I mean, some of this now is turning into outright, straight up, pure propaganda because, and my Russian friends, sorry, but I have to tell the truth. Here's a stamp. I don't know if you've seen this, Jeff, but This is a stamp of a picture of Hunka on a Ukrainian stamp where he apparently was supposed to have been honored as a war hero. It says heroes don't die. And here's the image. And this is absolutely 100% freaking fake. But people are buying this online.
Wow. I think that our adversaries understand that a certain number of people will believe it regardless. And there's probably a much larger swath of the population than we like to admit that's easily whipped up into an emotional frenzy. I think they probably, I know they study us. That's a big part of how they conquer other nations is, know your enemy. I mean, that was Sun Tzu. We know that they study us. And I think they kind of think it's funny that we in the West have this kind of guilt complex because the Chinese, for example, are the most racist people on earth. I mean, have you ever seen that? Laundry detergent commercial where the Chinese woman puts a black man in the washing machine and he comes out Chinese?
No.
Yes,
I haven't seen that.
That's a modern day laundry detergent commercial in China. So they're unabashedly racist. The rest of the world is really, like, the West is the only place that even thinks it's a bad thing. Everybody else is just, like, Gandhi was racist. He was a horrible racist. We're the only ones who even think it's a bad thing, and they see that as a vulnerability. So they just gaslight the hell out of us, making us think we're all racist, when in fact we're the least racist society on earth. I mean, where do minorities have it better than in predominantly white countries? Really, at the end of the day, when you look at statistics, the predominantly white countries are the safest countries to live in for minorities, in particular. I kind of recognized at an early age, just based on some of my reading of Carl Sagan and whatnot, that as an atheist, I probably wouldn't have survived anywhere in the world but the West. I mean, we are the greatest civilization that's ever existed, and we just got to get back to being the West and stop trying to please our adversaries. By showing them how not racist we are and bringing in the entire third world, which, by the way, doesn't solve any problems. It just imports a lot of problems for us. It will, import the third world, and you're going to become the third world. Like there are limits to how much we can absorb, and of course there are all kinds of security concerns that have just been cast by the wayside. Normally, we do a lot of screening, and we try to make sure that criminal elements are not being imported, that radical elements are not being imported. But we're not doing that anymore, and it's too convenient for our adversaries, right? It's like I said, whatever the weakens the West is true. So that's what's happening. I mean, we can see it just from a lot of the footage there. What was it? I think it was there was an election in Eritrea, and all hell broke loose all over the West. These different political factions, engaged in mob violence in the streets, everywhere from Canada to Israel, and so those are the kinds of things that are going to take up resources, make us less secure, and the Chinese Communist Party, they won't even have to kill us. I mean, we'll be getting butchered in the streets by radicals and gangsters, and like I say, they'll overtake us without firing a shot, because we'll just implode as a state.
And I mean, it's nonstop, worldwide, tonight, has been for days. The information warfare is ramping up even more. Investigations going on, and so here's another thing that has been uncovered. I don't know how convenient this is. It all seems to be coming together all at the same time. Coincidence in politics, there's rarely a coincidence. So it seems like all this stuff was lined up in advance to me. But here's, I guess back in 2007, Hunka was honored along with a whole bunch of other Nazis, I guess, not whoever they were at the time, people who served in the military. They were given medals for serving Ukraine in World War II. It says that the Medal for Merit was initiated by the Congress of Ukrainians of Canada, Toronto branch. And they gave these things out. It's true for, I guess, defending Ukraine, military Ukraine organizations, formations, and superstructures. The idea of the medal is expressed in the form of an equilateral golden cross supplemented in the intervals by stylized faces symbolizing the rays of the sun. In the middle of the cross, on its larger part, a golden cathedral coat of arms with a trident is placed in a characteristic oval stylized floor. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get it. Canadian Congress of Ukrainians. And so they celebrating the celebration of the days of independence and union of, it's blocked there, but of Ukraine, January 22nd, 1918 and 1919, I think it is, commemoration of Ukrainian veterans. And this was in 2007. So somebody found this, and it's of course making headlines tonight and prompting more calls for the resignations of Trudeau, Freeland, and I think it's making Canada look terrible, obviously, because if they were fighting for, against the Russians, they must have been fighting for the Nazis, right? What do you make of that?
I mean, it's obvious. Speaker Rota, I think, did that math in his head as he was reading the statement. Did you see his eyebrows go up?
Yes.
So everybody knows who was fighting the Russians in the Second World War. It was the Nazis. Right. So, and this is exactly the kind of document that the intelligence apparatus should have turned up in his background check. So, and you know what? They probably did, and their warnings were disregarded. I mean, that's a possibility. I won't say it's a probability. I'll say it's a possibility. I don't know how this guy got in there. I really don't know. But it just kind of leads me to believe that it's probably deliberate.
It has to be, man. Like, this is so freaking convenient.
Ineptitude only goes so far. I'm a huge proponent of Hanlon's razor. Never attribute malice where ineptitude will suffice to explain human behavior. I'm a massive proponent of that, but this, I'm afraid, a claim of incompetence here, which is strained credulity. It's too far, and it's too convenient for our adversaries. So the silver lining, I think, is that this is in the mainstream news, and so now Canadians are more apt to wake up to the fact that we're in bed with Nazis.
Right. Exactly.
Proxy war in Ukraine. So.
Which
Come on, Canada.
Yeah, which from the beginning I've been saying we shouldn't do this. This is a really, really bad idea. They've got Nazi battalions over there. They actually, we ran videos here of summer training camps for Nazi youth, and people were like, "Oh no, there's no Nazis. I saw it on the news." It's like, bad idea.
Yeah, and I mean, if we could see that early on, do you think like the intelligence community couldn't see that? I'm pretty sure it's all by design.
So again, it's so confusing because it's like we're at war with ourselves and the enemy. It's like, so yeah. What do? Well, you have to have an election. You have to get rid of these guys.
You absolutely have to do that. It is clearly a leadership crisis. It wasn't a health crisis; it was a leadership crisis. So well, and I'll throw in my usual shtick, which is the fourth turning. Strauss-Howe generational theory, and fourth turning is a crisis era that we enter into every 4 generations. So if you go back in 4 generational intervals, you'll see the Second World War, the American Civil War, the American Revolution, the Salem witch trials, and here we are living through one of these crisis eras. And the witch hunts are back. The pitchforks are digital and financial, but the flames are still very real. And the reason that we enter into a crisis era every 4 generations is because when we surmount these crises, as in the GI generation winning the Second World War in the previous fourth turning, that generation that surmounts the crisis ushers in the next era of the Enlightenment with new technologies, higher standards of living, an economic boon, and a population boom. We always have a population boom in the wake of these crisis eras. And it is that generation, the boomer generation, that when they reach peak institutional power in their early elderhoods, just prior to retirement, when they're at the peaks of their careers, they tyrannize the hell out of us. They follow the generational archetype of the prophet, as in the Prophet Muhammad, so named for the generations who found our religions. The current religion is postmodernism, which is just American communism. And the prophet, when he appears in our stories, is usually depicted as an old man with a long gray beard. So the Star Wars original trilogy would have been a fourth turning. And Obi-Wan would be the prophet in that story. He's a good prophet. The problem with fourth turning is that, and the problem they're having in Star Wars is that Obi-Wan is the only Jedi of his generation. So that is the situation that we're in. I mean, there are a few Jedis out there like Jordan Peterson and Dr. Robert Malone. But those running our institutions are corrupt, as they have been their whole lives. And that's why Canada's military has been a disgrace for 30 years, because as soon as they reach peak institutional power there back in the 90s, due to the lower retirement age and the high rate of attrition, everything just fell apart. And the institution's been in crisis ever since. I can't believe we sent people to war in that institution, looking back now. But you go back and you look at every one of those scandals in Canada's scandal-plagued military, and at the center, you will find a boomer male. Just like if you go back and you look at every one of those statue topplings, you will find a boomer female. And what seems to be happening is the boomer generation went commie back in the 70s when they were university students, got in bed with the postmodernist university professors like Michel Foucault in particular, critical theory. And critical theory is Marxism. It's a Marxist, I don't know if I'd say it's a praxis. It's really more like the foundational theory for the praxis theories being applied, as in, intersectionality, critical race theory, that kind of thing. And so yeah, if you look at our stories, though, Star Wars, is an example of a good prophet, as is the Lord of the Rings series with Gandalf. But if you look at the stories that early humans wrote, like say for example in the Old Testament, every time you see the elder prophet with the long gray beard, well, I mean, it's hard times for the rest of us, whether we're talking about Yahweh in the Garden of Eden, Abraham, Lot, Noah, and on and on and on. Every time one of these guys shows up, it's well, I mean, first three horsemen of the apocalypse, right? The disease, war, famine. That's the trifecta of state collapse. And well, we know what comes next, right? Behold the pale horse, and he who sat on him was death, and hell followed with him. And hell is a pre-state society, like Thomas Hobbes said. Without the state, the Leviathan, which is a junkyard dog that you need to keep on a chain and never let it put its head higher than you. But you need the junkyard dog in order to pacify the territory and ward off predators, so you can live a peaceful life. But just recognize that he'll eat you if you give him, you let him get the wrong ideas about where his place is in the hierarchy. So yeah, that's the game plan, I think, of the Chinese Communist Party too, is basically just to weaken us, not just with those three factors, but that is the trend. Like those are part of the social trends that we just see recur over and over and over again. Like we see everything from Orwell to Huxley to Revelations. People can just feel that we're living in biblical times, and that is the reason. Is because every 4 generations we go into one of these crisis eras, and the way through it is for the generation coming up behind the prophet to displace them from peak institutional power. So that would be the nomad, who is depicted in some different ways. Like, well, Jesus would have been a nomad in my read, but so is Judas. So when you think you're looking for Judas in the current fourth turning, think like Rage on Behalf of the Machine or Metallica. They tend to be the first wave Gen Xers, the older Gen Xers. They were left alone with the boomers for too long. So they're all about that cold hard cash. They're split, obviously, like it's never black and white. But the way that we displace, the way that we get through it is when we displace the prophet at peak institutional power, usually through natural attrition. But what happens in Star Wars is the crisis resolves in Return of the Jedi when when Han Solo is the oldest man left standing, and the rest of them are ghosts, and they're all doing a little dance with the Ewoks. That is where the crisis resolves, and the next era of the Enlightenment is ushered in. And we can follow that same pattern through all of the different stories that I just mentioned. Garden of Eden, Elder Prophet is Yahweh. The hero archetype, Luke Skywalker archetype, is Adam and Eve. That's currently represented as the millennial generation. They're seen as civic-minded and pure. The GIs, in World War II, the general said they were the best damn kids they'd ever seen. And into their old age, like they were the first generation of senior citizens. They're very civic-minded, and they stayed engaged like that, and presided over an era of peace and prosperity. With the Adam and Eve story, what ends up happening is I think it is representative of a revolution. And what we're seeing is Yahweh, who refers to himself multiple times in the third person plural, we and us. So he's not an individual. He has a group with him. It's probably his generation, and they are clothed, but Adam and Eve are not. So they're living a lower standard of living than the prophet archetype. And he's telling them, you serve me, and commanding them one thing, and that is to remain ignorant of the knowledge of good and evil. And what kind of leader wants you to remain ignorant of the knowledge of good and evil? Well, it's probably a bad guy. And well, Adam's place is in the garden, and from what we know about hunter-gatherer societies now, that is also the latrine, because that's how the fruit gets planted, is we transport it in our gut and fertilize it elsewhere. So in hunter-gatherer societies, that's where the fruit grows, is in the latrine. So that's definitely a lower standard of living. And when they take the advice of the serpent and become aware of the knowledge of good and evil, well, the thing is, he tells them that if you eat that fruit, then you will surely die. But the serpent is the one who says you will surely not die. You will become like gods. And so they eat the fruit, and they're ultimately banished for their lack of fealty. But but he also clothes them. He says, "Behold, they have become like us, for they know they have the knowledge of good and evil," something like that. And they clothe them. And what do? But they usher in the next stage of the Enlightenment, which is agrarianism. So they become farmers, and then they have a son, which would be the next generation of prophets, and that is Cain. And then they have a second son, which would be the next generation of nomad, and that is Abel. And that's what Abel does. The nomad tends to migrate. That's why it is so named. We come of age at a time when all the industry's been destroyed by the generation going up ahead of us, and they took all the white-collar jobs. So we have to seek our fortunes elsewhere, like the original San Francisco 49ers in the gold rush back in the day. And they were also the midlife generation that led on the battlefields of the Civil War that ended up winning, that resolved their crisis when they displaced their elders from peak institutional power. And the same thing happened in the Second World War with the firing of guys like McAllister and the installment of guys like George Patton. When we displace those prophet generational archetypical elders from peak institutional power, the nomad is the one who leads to the resolution of the crisis. And back to the story of Cain and Abel, as we can see, since we're talking about generations and they're probably represented as archetypes, and that is kind of how we tell our stories, is it's just about a few individuals, when the reality is that every frontline soldier has 8 to 9 support personnel behind them. So if we're talking about generations, and the story of Cain and Abel is one, I think, of both why it is that envy is a deadly sin, and it's also a story about a genocide, probably the first one, at least, that we wrote a story about. This is going on a lot longer than that, if you've ever read Freud and the Oedipus complex. And when our elders grew oppressive, when we were hunter-gatherers, we would overthrow and eat them. And I like to think that we've grown quite a bit since then, and we can probably just win a political war and fire their asses. But only time will tell. I'm joking, folks. It's a joke.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we have time to fix all of this. I hope this war in Ukraine comes to an end. This seems like a pivotal moment. Some people saying this might be the beginning of the end of that war because of this revelation in Parliament and and the subsequent fallout from it. What do you think?
They're not going to go willingly. So don't expect that Trudeau is all of a sudden going to turn over a new leaf and start taking responsibility. He's never had any responsibility in his entire life. He's not going to start now. So don't get your hopes up in that regard. Like, we're going to have to dig these guys out like a tick. These revelations, we still have the problem with Jagmeet Singh. He's got to have that pension. So he's going to continue to prop this government up. I think perhaps there could be enough outcry to, get the NDP to break party lines. But again, don't hold your breath for any of this stuff. Ultimately, it's probably going to take a more formal process, like the full and open public inquiry. And of course, he's already trying to get his lawyer from the non-disclosure agreement he signed with a teenager to be the commissioner for that. So he's going to do everything he can to cleave to power. But it's a political solution, guys.
Yes. Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to add tonight? Any words of inspiration or hope for Canadians in what has to be one of our darkest times as a country?
Well, don't ask for easy times. Ask for interesting times, and try to see it as an opportunity to, make your mark in history. And I just try to be the guy who is going to be able to say one way or the other, however it turns out, that I did everything I could. So, but be smart about it. Obviously, there are some not so smart initiatives out there that and we should, kind of watch out for each other in that regard as well. But the thing is, what I used to say to the troops actually is that there are two things you got to remember when the chips are down. Number one, it's only temporary. Okay. Like I said, it's a crisis era. It has a beginning and an end. Ours started with the 2008 financial collapse. It was originally forecasted to end somewhere between 2026 and 2030. The fourth turning is here, was just published in July. Neil Howe's now saying it might be more like the early 2030s because the boomers are just so damn rich. There's so much entrenched wealth. But do what I'm doing. Go out there and call them out for being such rotten genocidal people. And the other thing, so two things you got to remember. Number one, it's a crisis era. It's only temporary. Crisis eras have beginnings and ends, so it's not a permanent state of affairs. And number two, it can always get worse. So whatever you do, don't do anything to make it worse. Okay, save the children convoy, please.
Exactly, I hear you, Jeff Evely. Thank you so much for helping us make at least a little bit of sense out of this craziness tonight.
I hope so.
Okay, folks, stay with me. When we come back, Joseph M. Lenard will join us to talk about the GOP presidential debate from last night, to give us his take on that. I'll be right back.
We are Mavericks. We say no to the Trudeau and Biden New World Order. And to bugs. Because bugs are creepy and gross. And people should not eat bugs. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Hey, no! To bugs!
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
There he is. Federal tyranny.
Yep, that's the background. There are no stars on the flag because 10th Amendment states' rights, despite the Dobbs decision, the SCOTUS all of a sudden, hey, there's a 10th Amendment, let's send that back to the states. Ignores states' rights normally, and G and God being whitewashed, because God has been whitewashed from America, the USA, for, how long now? Anyway.
So, Joseph, welcome back. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me back. I live posted through the whole debate last night, so I'm rip-roaring and ready to go. Although, I've got so many things running through my head. We'll forget some. We won't have time to say some. But first, I have to do full disclosure. I am supporting Trump for 2024. Now, that doesn't mean I hate everybody else, right? I support Trump at this time, this place, we are in. That's like 2000. I supported John Kasich, not G.W. Bush. Now, that was before Kasich became a governor and moved way left. I would never, I didn't support Kasich after 2008. So, doesn't mean I wouldn't support any of the others running that were in the debate or didn't make the debate stage at some other point. I don't have Christie derangement syndrome or Haley derangement syndrome. I think every one of them would make a good cabinet person in the right spot. Like Christie, if he and Trump can put the 6-year-old antics aside, his prosecutorial expertise and experience would be great for the DOJ, right? So, DeSantis, maybe another time, just not this time. And I'm not here to spin for Trump. I'm here, principles, not personalities, to give my honest thoughts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was a lot of all of that, especially the ugly of the over-talking.
Yeah, there was a lot of that last night in the debate. Do you think that hurt anybody, or what's your assessment of it?
Well, it could have hurt some of them, and though ultimately, while Burgum may have gotten a plus out of it because he got some time, granted, he would have otherwise not gotten. And he made some great points. And again, he would be a great cabinet member of some sort. So, yeah, I think it hurt some of them a little. I think the person who was hurt the most was Haley after the bump she got from the first debate, the over-talking, but more so the every time you speak, I get dumber, isn't going to cut
it. Yeah. Here, let me just run a little clip here. And honestly, I'm not even sure where we're at on this timeline, but I'm just going to let a little bit of it roll. We might get some of that banter back and forth here.
It's not nonsense.
So look, here's what I want to respond. These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's involved.
Some of us are tainted, but the bottom line is
excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting. While I'm speaking.
You said bottom paper.
If I may finish,
You can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
One of the challenges we should have
focus on the issues that matter. We know we can fix this in China. Everybody knows that.
If I may address,
focus on holding Joe Biden accountable. That's what we need to be focusing on.
I actually agree with Ron DeSantis.
Speaking at the same time, no one can understand
exactly.
your message.
So if I may, I agree with Ron DeSantis on China. When every other CEO expanded into the Chinese market, you know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there. And when I started my next company, Strive, right when that's years ago. Right when I started my next company, Strive, to compete against BlackRock. Excuse me. To compete against BlackRock, I made a commitment that we would never do business in China. And I will say something.
Yes. I think you have more than time to explain your point.
Well, if I was interrupted by a lot of people here, and I want to be respectful because I believe these
are good people,
but I do not believe in these. We're sitting here in the Reagan Library.
Yes, I wish you
in
did
the
not
honor of Ronald Reagan's library, if I may, from one admirer of Ronald Reagan to another. From one admirer of Reagan to another, we cannot sit and violate
4 years ago. This isn't productive.
I want to hear about that.
Let's have a policy debate.
What's going?
Okay. Jesus. Help me out here. What do you think?
That was probably the worst of the worst of the exchanges. And, I get being passionate, but the rules for any debate need to be the mic is only hot for the person recognized by the chair. That would cut out a lot of this because they would know they're not going to be heard. That grandstanding ain't going to work. They're just not going to be heard. So it would cut a lot of that down. Yeah, there still will be a passionate maybe outburst every once in a while, but it would cut that way down.
Ramaswamy seemed to sort of come out on the top there, was able to kind of get some words in, then it turned back into that chaos. Do you think he did well there, or did any of them come out on top or lose, or how do you score that?
Well, this particular segment, I think they both dinged themselves. And I'm a big Tim Scott guy. I think Tim Scott is second only to Kristi Noem in the race for VP for Trump, because Trump is going to be the nominee, bar a major meltdown. So again, setting that aside, this debate is still important. Like I said when I was on with you for the first one, these are still important for cabinet posts and just general discussion about issues and posturing for 2026 Senate seats or House seats or 2028, because Trump can only serve one more term. He's out after that. It's not 2 consecutive terms, it's 2 terms, period. So posturing for 2028 does matter here.
Okay. Here's Chris Christie.
Fox News and others have been covering it. Governor Christie, crime in major cities is striking fear into the hearts of Americans. Just last night, looters took over the streets of Philadelphia. You said in the last debate that you would use U.S. attorneys to prosecute crimes local prosecutors won't, but they are stretched as well, and they could not handle all of the lawlessness, the shoplifting, all the carjackings, the armed robberies. They're all surging. Progressive prosecutors were elected by their constituents, and they can't be fired by a president. So what would you do to end the revolving door of criminality?
Well, look, Dana, I'm the only one on this stage who's done it. For 7 years, I ran the 5th largest office in this country at the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey, and we set records for the number of prosecutions that we brought that still have not been broken. And the reason was that we went after the crime that was affecting people's lives. And as president, I will appoint an attorney general and instruct that attorney general that you are to put all the resources that are necessary to bring our cities back under control. The fact is, they will be stretched. There's no doubt about that, but that's what they take the job for, because they love the idea of enforcing the law. We've got to bring law and order back to this country, and not just in our cities. But we need the law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right. I want to ask...
I think there's 3 things there. And I don't know why all of a sudden I'm blurry. But
I don't know either, but...
anyway.
You know how to fix that? Put your hand right up to the camera like that, and then take it away, and it'll refocus.
Try to get it to refocus.
There you go. It had you there. It had you there. Here you go. It'll get you. Just wait for a second.
All right. Well, anyway,
maybe not.
And I might be able to change my background. I've had that happen with Skype, and it changed my background. But again, I was perfectly fine for 10 minutes, and now all of a sudden it's going to act up. But anyway, 3 things. Christie makes my point about him, maybe not DOJ then, maybe AG, right? He makes my point. He brings value and expertise and experience for a particular cabinet post, if we put aside the nonsense. 2, again, I'm not here to spin for Donald Trump. I think Christie had a great line with the Donald Duck, because I do agree that Trump should be at the debate, not because he needs to be for the primary, but to garner attention or attraction, try to attract those independents, because no one wins with just their base and their base alone. You have to go for the independents. So he should be there, look presidential, but that's the problem. His hubris won't allow him to just address the audience. He'll make a fool of himself and respond to some of these things. And the third thing is, this was one of two issues, that and schools, that indeed, because we're the big tent party. The fascocrats are all in lockstep on everything. But on crime and schools, the GOP is indeed together on. We have differing things on the different other issues, but that was one we're all in lockstep on.
So, okay, let's listen to this with DeSantis.
Prosecutors in your state, but as as president, you would not have the ability to do that. How do you think about dealing with the root causes of crime, especially this revolving door of the criminals that just get out and come back and commit another crime?
Well, the crime in these cities is one of the strongest signs of the decaying of America. We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Just being in Southern California over the last couple of days, my wife and I have met 3 people who have been mugged on the street, and that would have never happened 10 or 20 years ago. In Florida, we back the blue. We support the men and women of law enforcement. They are keeping us safe. We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. And yes, when I had 2 progressive prosecutors that weren't following the law in Florida, I removed them from their posts, and the people of Florida are safer as a result of it. As president, I will use the Justice Department to bring civil rights cases against all of those left-wing Soros-funded prosecutors. We're not going to let them get away with it anymore. We want to reverse this country's decline. We need to choose law and order over rioting and disorder.
On a related subject, Governor Haley, there's a nationwide policing shortage. Retirements are up. Recruitment is in the tank. Morale is at a record low.
Well, I think we'll stop there and let you comment on that, Joseph.
Yeah, well, I kind of distracted playing with the settings, and I was able to step the camera down to 480p, and that seems to have cleared it up. I tried changing the background, it didn't matter. So 4080p mode. Hey, you can see me in focus now.
Well, you look wonderful. No issues.
Thank you. Yeah. So I didn't quite get that exchange as I was playing with the settings.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's listen to. Let me get this next clip up here. Do I want? Okay, let's go to this with Nikki Haley. And we'll bring her up. You already mentioned, you already talked a little bit about DeSantis anyway, so let's get her.
On the topic of healthcare, Governor Haley, healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy for American families, accounting for 2/3 of all personal bankruptcies. As president, how you protect Americans who get sick from financial ruin?
First of all, how can we be the best country in the world and have the most expensive health care in the world? We have an issue. My mom was in the hospital, and when she was in the hospital, they tried to bring her a couple of Tylenol, and she said, I don't need it. And they said, honey, go ahead and take it because you're paying for it anyway. Why is it that when we got the bill, the insurance company and the hospital negotiated the bill for her without her having anything to do with it? When I am president, we will break all of it, from the insurance company to the hospitals to the doctor's offices to the PBMs to the pharmaceutical companies. We will make it all transparent, because when you do that, you will realize that's what the problem is. Second thing is you've got to deal with tort law. The doctors don't give you the 10 tests because they want to. It's because of the 90% chance they'll get sued. And then we need to bring competition back to healthcare, get rid of certificate of need systems, and make sure that they can compete. We have to put the patient in the driver's seat. They've been in the back seat for way too long. And once we give the patient the ability to decide their health care, deciding which plan they want, that is when we will see magic happen. But we're going to have to make every part of the industry open up and show us where their warts are, because they all have them, and we need to fix this on behalf of the American people.
So, she's a very strong speaker.
Yeah.
I think she does very well, but she just doesn't seem to get that much additional traction, no matter what she does. What do you think?
Well, she got a bump after that first debate, so
yeah.
I think she had a chance to get another bump. But I think the Vivek thing, every time you speak, I get dumber, is going to ding her. But she's absolutely right regarding the need for tort reform, so that these doctors aren't doing a bazillion different tests, not necessarily because you necessarily need them or they think you should have them, but it's cover your behind. They do it, right, to prevent the lawsuits, because their malpractice insurance is through the roof already, and they're trying to avoid being sued. And I thank John McLean for the Obamacare still being around, and regional coverage. I agree with Haley in that more needs to be done to help create competition, so that others can get into other markets. But part of that is each state's own idiotic regulation, right? Like Michigan, Blue Cross, there's Blue Cross Michigan, Blue Cross Ohio, Blue Cross Indiana, rather than Blue Cross of the Midwest and 10 others of the Midwest competing with one another and having economy of scale of being a regional, rather than having to have individual entire operations in each state because of each state's own personal individual regulation. But I am a states' rights guy, so I'm caught in the middle on that. That's it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Okay, so let's get into this exchange here with, I think it's Mike Pence. I think there might be somebody else in
Is on
this
the
too.
rise and intensifying. According to a recent study, members of that community are 9 times more likely to be victims of violent hate crimes. As president, how would you protect this community from violent attacks and discrimination?
Well, as President of the United States, I'll stand up for the safety and the civil liberties of every American, from every background. And I want the American people to know that. But I want to answer the question as well, Dana, that you just asked Doug Berg. Because by way of full disclosure, Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit, I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years. And so full disclosure, look, education is a state and local function. The state of Indiana had one of the very first school choice programs in the country. And when I was governor of the state of Indiana, we doubled it. And as to your question, Dana, let's be very, very clear. When the Lenard Community Schools in Iowa had a policy where you had to have a permission slip from your parents to get a Tylenol, but you could get a gender transition plan without notifying your parents, I weighed in with a foundation. That's not bad policy, that's crazy. We're going to stand up for the rights of parents, and we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect our kids from this radical gender ideology agenda, and we've got to empower parents at the state level with the ability to choose where their kids go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. You empower parents, and our schools will straighten up and reflect our values and focus on the basics faster than you could possibly imagine.
Next subject.
So there he is, focusing on that, this culture war, transgender, all of that stuff. Do you think that helped him?
Yeah, I think it helped him a little, but not necessarily that particular thing. Again, three things on Pence here. The first, the cutesy little, I got to admit I'm sleeping with a teacher thing. Cute, clever, off the cuff. He did
Heard it before. He keeps using that line.
Oh, you have? I have
yeah.
not heard him say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got applause from the audience. But, you know, I don't think it really bought him that much. And the other thing is, like I said before, schools and crime, the issue of school choice and porn in the classroom. Gay, straight, I don't give a damn. Sex doesn't belong in grade school, right? That's something Republicans agree on. So that's not bad, and I think to some degree that helps them. And the third thing, unrelated to that clip, but so I don't forget, I immediately thought of the same line that Pence or someone on his staff did. Thankfully, somebody had the brain capacity to say it other than me. When Biden was coming into Detroit, he shouldn't be on the picket line. He needs to be in the unemployment line. That, to me, is an obvious line. Why hasn't I heard that from anyone other than me until Pence at the debate?
Well, Pence is, he's pretty smooth, but he just doesn't have that support from the MAGA base because people think that he stabbed Trump in the back, basically. I think he also, because of his strong religious beliefs, I think that he probably doesn't appeal very much to people who aren't very religious. So I don't know. He seems, he's just kind of all over the map, and he's just got a very niche base of support. Yeah, I don't know. He just can't seem to spread that out. And I think it's just because of all that baggage from J6.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. The black guy that ran several cycles ago, also in the Pence lane, of the religious right lane. I can't think of his name. I love him. I was a supporter. He had no chance in hell of becoming president. Again, Pence, could I support him maybe some other time? Yeah, but certainly not this time. And full disclosure, I accepted Pence as Trump's VP as one of several decent choices, but I thought there were other better choices than Pence even for VP then. And yeah, at the end, his time has just come and gone. I'm sorry, Mike. Your time as governor was not as good. Me being from the Midwest, I know. It's not, your record there is not as good as you proclaim it to be.
Okay, let's let the little of this roll.
U.S. soldiers in the fight.
It's in our interest to end this war, and that's what I will do as president. We are not going to have a blank check. We will not have U.S. troops, and we're going to make the Europeans do what they need to do. But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded. We don't even have control of our own territory. We have got to defend the American people before we even worry about all these other things. And I watch these guys in Washington, D.C., and they don't care about the American people. They don't care about the fentanyl deaths. They don't care about the communities being overrun because of this border. They don't care about the Mexican drug cartels. So as Commander-in-Chief, I will defend this country's sovereignty.
But it's not a territorial dispute. It's never been a territorial dispute.
And 90% of the resources that we send over to Ukraine is guaranteed. It's a loan. It is not 90% of the money that we send over there is loan. Well, we can talk about this, but at the end of the day, 90% of the money that we send over there is actually in the form of a loan. It's not actually not being paid by Ukraine, it's paid by the NATO, our NATO allies.
So I think it's a good topic.
I think it's a really good topic too. I will say let's debate the fact that our national vital interest is in degrading the Russian military. By degrading the Russian military, we actually keep our homeland safer, we keep our troops at home, and we all understand Article 5 of NATO.
We have to level with the American people.
I thought you said something about waiting until your turn to talk. So hold on. So at the end of the day, I'm going to finish my. I'll be happy to debate on this.
I'll respond.
I'll look forward to this one right now. So at the end of the day, when you think about the fact that if you want to keep American troops at home, attack on NATO territory would bring us and our troops in. By degrading the Russian military, we reduce, if not eliminate, an attack on NATO territory.
Finish that exchange. We have to level with the American people. We have to level with the American people on this issue. The reality is just because Putin is not Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for
actually,
Russia is a
that
win
is not
for
true.
China.
We're driving
a win
Russia.
For Russia
excuse
is a
me.
win for China.
Excuse me. If you'll have
but
a chance,
I forgot you like China. That's
no,
why
you'll have your chance in just a moment.
Yeah.
The hurling personal insults isn't helping. China is the real enemy, and we're driving Russia further into China's arms. We need a reasonable peace plan to end this, especially this is a country whose president just last week
Vivek,
was
if you
hailing
let
a Nazi in
Putin
his own
have
ranks.
Ukraine, that's a green light to China to take Taiwan.
We need a
Peace
reasonable
comes
plan
through
to
strength.
peace. We need a reasonable plan to peace.
Governor Christie.
The Communist Party of China is the real enemy.
Governor Christie, President Biden's first 2 years have brought China, Russia, and Iran closer together. Are we focused too much on Ukraine and not enough on this threat from the New World Order?
No, they're all connected, Stuart. They're all connected. The Chinese are paying for the Russian war in Ukraine. The Iranians are supplying more sophisticated weapons, and so are the North Koreans now as well, with the encouragement of the Chinese. The naivete on this stage from some of these folks is extraordinary. Look, I understand people want to go and talk to Putin. Guess what? So did George W. Bush. So did Barack Obama. So did Donald Trump. And so did Joe Biden when he said a small invasion wouldn't be so bad. Every one of them has been wrong. And the fact of the matter is, we need to say right now that the Chinese-Russian alliance is something we have to fight against, and we are not going to solve it by going over and cuddling up to Vladimir Putin. Look, Donald Trump said Vladimir Putin was brilliant and a great leader. This is the person who is murdering people in his own country, and now not having enough blood, he's now going to Ukraine to murder innocent civilians and kidnap 20,000 children. And let me tell you, if you think that's where it's going to stop, if we give him any of Ukraine, next will be Poland. Right. This is a guy who said, this is a guy in 1991 who said that was the darkest moment in world history when the Soviet Union fell. Listen, everybody, he wants to put the old band back together, and only America can stop it. Right. And when I'm president, we will.
Governor Burgum, I want to get to Governor Burgum. He hasn't had a chance. I have a question I think you're going to.
Okay.
Yeah. I think first, I think all of them have a point to be made. This is a very gray area. I write for thelibertybeacon.com. For November, I have planned a piece called Gray Areas. This is one of those. There's no all good, all bad, right? There's a whole lot of gray in there. So, number one, I agree with Europe must do more, we do less. Absolutely. I am for bread and bullets, no cash, because Biden, corrupt, Zelensky, corrupt. But please, people, Putin, corrupt as the two of them combined, and none of that changes the unprovoked invasion of a sovereign nation. And the last, most important point is, like it or not, this is a fact. You can agree with whether it should have been done or not, but it is fact. Bill Clinton made it U.S. policy to be Ukraine's protectorate, regardless of NATO membership or not, if they gave up their nukes as they did. It is U.S. policy to be Ukraine's protectorate, period. Again, like it or not, that is just a fact of the way it is. But again, We should be doing less and not one penny of cash. Europe must do more. This is their backyard. I wrote on beforeitsnews.com, tinyurl.com, Putin atrocity apologists, page after page, debunking all the Putin talking points. But also, I'm not supporting Zelensky. I'm supporting the Ukrainian people who have been oppressed by Russians for more than 1 century. That's history. That's a pattern of behavior. Remember, Russia invaded Finland before Hitler invaded anybody. Russia invaded Poland along with Germany. Russia, of course, held captive all the Soviet bloc states thereafter. And when the Soviet Union disbanded, what did they do? They invaded Chechnya, they invaded Georgia, now they're back invading Ukraine for a second time in 1 decade. That's a pattern of behavior. What Christie said at the end is true. When a tyrant tells you his plans, listen to them. And he plans to put the Soviet Union back together again. So yes, it is a NATO security question.
Okay, well, that's not the way that I've been seeing it, but I respect your view on it. Do you think that Chris Christie scored points there? Because he seems to be pretty aggressive on this issue, and I don't think the war would come to an end with him there.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with my camera. I have to keep changing the definition to get back in focus. It's just an issue with Retalk. I haven't had it with Zoom or Skype. Anyway, yeah, I think Christie potentially scored himself some points there. But again, this is a gray area. The Republican Party is a big tent party. It is split on the issue of Ukraine. We're going to have disagreements. You and I disagree on this. I just don't see Neville Chamberlainism repeat here as going to be any different than the failing it was in World War II.
Okay. So let's, well, before we move on to talking about Trump, take Trump out of this, okay, sort of, just these guys. Is there a winner? Is there, what do you think?
I don't think, again, that there's a clear winner. I think some of them may have helped each other. And let me interject this. At the end, Dana said, who would you vote off? And thankfully, well, Christie said he would Trump. Again, that's the 6-year-old antics between him and Trump going on now. It's ridiculous. I don't care how you're polling nationally, even though the idiots at the RNC make that a factor to qualify for a debate. National polls are irrelevant. We do not elect president by popular vote. All that matters is state by state by state. How are you doing in Iowa and New Hampshire? So none of them, in my opinion, should drop out if they've got donors willing to support them through to New Hampshire, and then reassess if there's any valid path to go on, because Trump might lose Iowa or New Hampshire or both. And despite both Scott and Haley being from South Carolina, I think Trump's got South Carolina wrapped up, and then we'll roll on from there. But yeah, local polls are all that matters. Did anyone win? No, other than Haley with that one dumb comment, may hurt herself. All of them had some good enough moments to potentially gain a little, but you know, we'll have to see. But again, national poll, irrelevant. How are you doing in Iowa and New Hampshire right now? All that matters.
Okay, so we'll play that clip of Nikki Haley.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of the most dangerous social media apps that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say. Because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can get text messages, they can get all of these things.
This is very important for our party.
Exactly what they're doing.
Very important
and what
for our
we've
party,
seen
and I'm going to
is
say
you've gone and you've helped China make medicines in China, not America. You're now wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok in our kids' lives. We need to ban it.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 15 seconds.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of...
She seems to be like an angry mom to me.
Well, hey, I don't want you to start getting accused of being sexist, because, right, that's, if a man's aggressive, you know, but if a woman, she's a bitch, right?
Well, no, that's not what I mean at all. I mean,
but
like,
others, somebody
Pence,
might accuse you of that angle.
Because to me, Reagan would be like a father figure or even a grandfather figure when he was president, and she's sort of like a matriarch, you know, like a Margaret Thatcher, Iron Lady. You know, she's like, you don't want to get your mom upset with you, right? But she seems like, oh, she's stern now.
I think you did that well mentioning Thatcher, a strong woman. But my concern and the point I'm making is that some may twist that to be, like I said, oh my God, he's sexist. A woman dare not stand up. But no, right. No. But I think, again, both of them, principles, not personalities. I'm not here to spin. I think they both had some points on the issue. I was willing to support Vivek early on. I do not now. He could be good for a cabinet post, but I don't trust him, can't support him for president because look at his campaign finance records. Soros, PAC, front groups are helping fund his campaign, and he repeated the defund Israel parroting Ilhan Omar and Rashida Taliban garbage. Now, I agree we need to scale back our foreign aid, but you don't start with Israel, especially when Biden again is funding Iran, who is going to use that money to fund more terrorism. But TikTok, that's a gray area again. Nikki is right. We want to get kids off these apps. They're getting on at too early an age. They can't handle it. They don't belong there. But Vivek is right in that we have to approach youth where they are. You don't ignore a battlefield. Abraham Lincoln didn't get to just say, Gettysburg, Schmettysburg, let them have it, I don't want it. You know, they take Gettysburg and then roll on elsewhere then. Sometimes the enemy gets to dictate a battleground you have to fight on. And for now, that is a battleground, like it or not, we have to be there fighting on. So they both had some valid points there.
Okay, so let's take a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into the Trump side of things. We'll play a couple of clips of the Donald, and then we'll get Joseph to comment on all of that stuff. So do not go away. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so before we get into it, do you think it was wise of Donald Trump to not go to the debate and do his own thing again?
I've run for office myself, so let me just say that. And I've been involved in politics since '78. So I get, again, the gray area, both sides of the argument. I'm so far ahead, I don't need to fight in the primary. However, I've already said, I think he should be there trying to look presidential if he can tamp down his 6-year-old child that he lets out too often and be presidential and appeal to independence, right? Be above it. Speak to the people, not to your onstage opponents. Look towards the general election. And this sets up Biden for an excuse. You skip. Now, a primary and a general debate, I think, are two different things. But we all know Joe is going to want to hide in his basement again and look for any excuse to avoid a head-to-head debate with Trump or whomever, right? And you only lend a little fodder to that argument. I'm the president. I'm the incumbent. I think I'm ahead. You're a clown. I'm not going to give you, a place on the stage of equal stature with me. Now, Trump was president, though, so I don't know. His dumb base will soak that up. I would hope that wouldn't fly with independents, because, again, he's not just some random candidate now. He's the former president. So I would hope that wouldn't fly. But you see what I'm saying is you give them a little leeway and credence to use that argument against you. General and primaries, again, think are different. I think you should always debate. Now, again, I ran for office in deep blue Wayne County here as a Republican, taking on Democrats who were, of course, assured almost a guarantee of winning. And they took the position, of course, why should I debate this guy? All I have is downside. But again, I think in this case, you have upside if you appeal to not the GOP base, but the independents playing the general election long game. And I just don't think he and his crew get that.
Okay, here's Trump.
He made a fortune and makes a fortune with the war. It's up there again now. I don't know if you've been watching. It's getting up there again now. So give me 4 more years and I will give you the end to this horrible globalism that's killing our country. I'll give you the return of the United States of America as the greatest and strongest industrial nation in the history of the world. Together we will dismantle the corrupt power structure that has feasted on the suffering of the American auto worker and the workers of any kind, not just auto workers, workers of any kind. We will cast from power the financial forces that have turned American cities into ghost towns to build skyscrapers in Beijing, China. We will wield every lever of government to defend you and to hold accountable those who have profited from the betrayal and suffering of the American factory workers. So sad to see. As your 47th President of the United States, I will be your protector. I will be your advocate, and I will be your greatest champion, the greatest champion that you've ever had.
Okay, so he's a man of the people, working class, blue collar, definitely, you know, sounds populist. He's a populist, right? So
yeah, well, they call Bernie Sanders a populist too, so I hate that. That, you know, there's a left populist and a right populist. So
that's right.
But in this case, I think his approach here makes sense, right? You're complaining you need a 46% increase over 4 years because of what? Bidenomics, Bidenflation, Biden recession. I'm sorry, take that up with your union that supported Biden and put you in this situation, not your employer. Your employer didn't do that. It's not your employer's fault or problem. And it's the same thing, right, with dues. The unions steal your money and use it for other than your strike fund. That's why they only do these wildcats, because what should be in your strike fund isn't there. It's been all given in campaign donations to the fascocrats. Take that up with your union, not your employer. Demand your union put more money back in your paycheck, every paycheck, by cutting your dues they misspend.
Okay. So let me see what else we have with Trump here. Hang on.
Yeah, while you're looking, one thing I did send out on social media, again with Christie, you know, their 6-year-old back and forth aside, he made another valid point about the deficit and the debt under Trump. Trump may love to claim about how he and Melania cut staff and expenses at the White House to save us a few million here and there, and he loves to brag about how he went at Boeing and saved us $1 billion or so on the new Air Force One. Well, that's great on the micro level, but you didn't veto one damn spending bill your entire presidency. You didn't really go after the big dollars. You took care of a few pennies while dollars were going out the back door. And that's another reason he should be in the debate, saying, we spent too much even while I was in office. I will veto spending bills. Demand the deficit must be slashed by half my first year.
Okay, and he's certainly focused on the economy. Here's Trump.
Because you're striking for wages, but you know you just 2 years or 3 years if you're lucky. How will we rescue the auto manufacturing in the United States? Let's remember, you got to remember, decades and decades of this subject for 12 years. Thought of becoming, how good was that's a lot. Had the easiest, nice. I would have had the nicest, softest life instead I have to beat these lunatics up all day long. Every day. I never heard of the word indictment. Now every 3 days. He spoke about the being indicted. He said something bad about Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the most corrupt president and most incompetent president we've ever had. No, I shouldn't have said that again for saying that. Decades of crooked politicians liking jobs as disposable and American workers as expendable. They got rich by taking bribes, rape and pillage our jobs and our weapons. Pro-union president in history. Nonsense. Think of it. His entire career, just think of it. His entire career has been an act of economic treason and union destruction. He's destroyed unions, shipping millions of American jobs overseas while personally taking money from foreign nations hand over fist. Look at the money he got from China. Look at what's coming out. China. Crooked Joe backed NAFTA. He backed China's entry into the World Trade Organization. He backed the horrendous Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have destroyed the American auto industry had I not stopped it. You remember when I stopped it? You guys were gone. You were gone. And that was a done deal. And in fact, during the debate, I got beautiful Hillary Clinton. I don't call her crooked because I only use that name for Biden now. So I call her beautiful. She's a beautiful woman, beautiful.
Okay, so again, focused on the economy, but also hammering on Biden there. Biden trying to portray himself as, you know, the most pro-union president in history, and Trump taking a shot at him there. And it's not hard for him to do that because I don't think Biden's record on that front is actually very good at all. I think he's quite right. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. A couple things here. Now, first, I got to say, look at that disclaimer at the bottom of the page.
I was just going to mention that. Yes.
Right. Right.
Says, disclaimer, this video may contain potential allegations that might contradict or are not confirmed by CNN News
Now,
18.
we all know Biden lies outright in every speech.
Yeah.
Do they ever put up a disclaimer when Biden's speaking? No, of course not. Whether it be, I was at ground zero on 9/12, all right? It was 7 days later, not 1 day later, all right? You could say that's a misremember, all right? He was there. It's just was a few days later. But it's a pattern of behavior. Like I said about Russia in invading other sovereign nations without provocation. Pattern of behavior. He lies over and over and over and over again, but no disclaimer. But Trump is absolutely right. Again, take up with your union their idiocy of supporting the Green New Deal crap and the EV mandates that are costing the big three more and more and more. These record profits you're talking about are going to completely evaporate in a few years if the EV mandates continue, and they need less jobs for those. You're putting yourself out of a job, right? Are you willing to put in your contract, oh, the next time there's a downturn at the big three, we'll give back our bonus checks? No, of course not, because the commie UAW leadership only is about enjoying in the good times, and when there are bad times, that's your problem. We still deserve our good time.
Perfect, actually. You know, they probably made them.
Do you think he's right to be focusing on the economy the way he is?
For years, for decades.
Oh, absolutely.
But I corrected him. You know how I did it? By terminating it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the big advantages for Trump doing it this way is at his event, he's going to generate, and did generate, you know, substantial audience. He doesn't have anybody interrupting him. He doesn't have anybody asking him any questions. He gets to focus on the subjects that he wants to focus on. He gets to hammer home his points. It's a great, you know, it's just repetitive marketing to deliver the message over and over and over again to get the desired response. He controls the entire situation. It's all Trump all the time. And even though he's not involved in the other debate, we still end up talking about him because he is the leader. So you have to still mention him at the end anyway when you're doing your analysis of who won the debate, because even though he wasn't on the stage with them, he's still part of the debate in an external fashion.
Yeah, like
Comment?
I said, thelibertybeacon.com in November, gray area. Things aren't always black and white, right? Pros and cons to everything. There's no such thing as perfection. There's always trade-offs. And are you getting more good than you're getting bad? So what you're saying is absolutely the pro of skipping the debate and doing this. All him, only him, focus on what he wants to focus on rather than being set up by the unitard vision, leftist plant that, you know, RNC was stupid to insist must partner with Fox. You're, again, putting a leftist plant. So we're not only debating each other, we are debating a leftist asking questions, like with the amnesty thing. We did that with Reagan. We're not going to be stupid enough to do it again. Reagan said that was his dumbest mistake, right? He granted amnesty in return for border security in the bill, and of course, the fascocrats immediately got the amnesty, never funded the border security, and it created the magnet we have today. So no amnesty discussion, period, until the wall is fully built and the border is completely shut down. Then and only then is an amnesty discussion even remotely possible. But for now, I think he's best focusing on the economy. Wasn't it Carville and Clinton? It's the economy, stupid. Well, what goes around comes around, pal. It's the economy, stupid. And Bidenomics, Bidenomics, as I hashtag it, is failing everybody up and down the scale, but especially the poor and lower middle class.
Yeah, well, there he is in Michigan, kind of eating Joe Biden's labor lunch. He's definitely scoring points here against Biden and picking up support from labor, blue collar. Here's
Everybody
more.
wants to see choice in schools also. If you want to buy an electric car, that's absolutely fine. I'm all for it. But we should not be forcing consumers to buy electric vehicles. They want to buy all trucks. They want to make all trucks electric. You know that, right? They're going to destroy, you talk about supply chain, they're going to destroy the supply chain. They're forcing the truckers to go all electric trucks. Now the trucks probably don't have the power. They only go about 300 miles, whereas a diesel fuel truck goes 2,000 miles. That's a big difference, would you say? Also, the battery takes up so much room, there's practically no room left for what you happen to be shipping. The whole thing is crazy. They want to do it with boats too. I was with a boating manufacturer in a great state, South Carolina, with a great governor, by the way, Henry McMaster. And we were there 2 days ago, and I asked them that question. I said, do they want to go all electric? I said, how does that work for a boat? He said, the entire boat would be like one big battery, we'd have no room for anything else. I said, what happens if the boat has an accident, starts sinking? Do you get electrocuted if the boat sinks? The guy said, I've never thought of that, actually, but I think I gave him an idea, actually. Now, can you imagine the boat goes down and you're sitting on top of a battery? I don't feel good about that, right? In other words, you have to stop approximately for a truck 6 times for the same trip. How are they going to stop 6 times? And yet, it's not stopping these lunatics in Washington. These are lunatics. These are deranged people. And I'm not saying you can't buy an electric car. If you want to buy an electric car or a hybrid or an all-gasoline car or a truck, that has to be your choice. You should have that choice. It's great, right? I could see electric cars working great for certain uses, short-term, short-distance uses. We have unlimited gasoline. Remember that. We have unlimited. China doesn't. We have unlimited gasoline. For 500 years, we have gasoline, more than any other country in the world. Can you imagine? A few years ago, we were energy independent. Now we're begging countries to give us gasoline. Can you imagine? Now, can you even imagine? And we had the best, the lightest, the sweetest. We have the best stuff. Now we're getting it. We're taking tar. You know what tar is? It's like tar that they have to refine. You know where they refine it? In Houston, Texas. We take tar now from Venezuela. Venezuela was supposed to be the bad guys. Venezuela's getting rich. We're refining their tar. And we're not taking our beautiful, beautiful stuff. We have the best stuff, but we have the most. We have more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. We were energy independent, and we were going to make our fortune, and we were going to sell it to Europe. We were going to pay off our debt. We were going to lower taxes still further. It's amazing. And then these people came in and they have no clue, or they have a clue, which is even more dangerous in a certain way. Right now, electric cars don't go far enough, and they're just far, far too expensive, and people aren't going to be able to afford them. And the cost of operation is also much more. This is their option, though, if they want them. It's their option, and it's an option that some people will take, and I am all for them, but I will not allow, under any circumstances, the American automobile industry to die. I want it to thrive, and to thrive like never before.
Yeah, you know, I think he's so on the money there.
Oh, he's
yeah,
on
absolutely.
point on a couple things. First, towards the end, hey, envirotards, look up light sweet crude, which we get here out of the ground, versus heavy crude. Also, you morons, it costs more, it burns more carbon to bring that heavy crude up from Venezuela or over from the Middle East to then refine it here. So these people aren't sensible at all. And EVs, costs, the upper middle class and the rich can afford them as a second car for short trips, as Trump was making the point. And he mentioned boats. Kerry, Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, you all claim to be environmentalists, all right? Then get electric planes. You can do it. An all-electric plane, yeah, you'll have to go back to a propeller to be driven by that electricity, but put your money where your mouth is. Put your actions where your empty rhetoric is. They don't, they won't. Micro versus macro. Well, we talked in the past too, let me throw this, the wildfires, right? You envirotards refuse to let us manage the forest to put breaks in water reservoirs, which would help prevent or at least put out the fires that are ravaging out of control because you won't let us manage the forest. And you know what? It will disrupt Bambi, but you know what will disrupt Bambi more? Being burnt to a bleeping crisp, right? So these envirotards are hypocrites. They're all over. And again, the EV prices. The left want the poor and lower middle class on public transportation, electric buses. This is about putting people out of their cars and eliminating our freedoms of mobility.
Okay. Now I put the link to enter the studio in the chat, folks. So if you would like to join the conversation and ask Joseph some questions or make some comments of your own, feel free to click on the link. I can also check the chat. I just created this banner here as well. So that's how you can enter the studio. But it is in the chat, so all you have to do is copy and paste or click on it, and it'll take you right into our studio here, and you can join the show. And we'll do a little video conference thingy here today. Instead of going to the phones, you can join with your webcam or cell phone and join the conversation.
Now, while we're waiting, one more thing on the envirotards. Well, two,
Yeah.
actually. Right? Sure. I've shared in Facebook, freaked out, of course, a picture of an oil rig, you know, mildly cut out amongst all the beautiful, wonderful trees, juxtaposed against the cobalt strip mines. So spare me it is more environmentally friendly. And the batteries need special disposal when they're done. Micro, macro. Micro level solar panels on people's individual homes where the energy can be stored for off-peak hours. Perfect. Love it. People should do it. But this whole idea of solar farms, On the macro level, not functional, not logistically viable, and micro. I've been saying for decades now, barrel turbines, put them down the middle of highways. The wind does not have to blow. Cars going by both directions generate wind, which then those barrel turbines create energy on a local macro level. Those big things killing wildlife, including now ocean level, that you claimed to want to save the whales before, now you don't give two shits about the whales you're killing. I'm tired of this hypocrisy. Micro solutions exist. They're not looking for solutions. The Green New Deal is just a money laundering redistribution scheme.
Okay, let's take a little break here, and maybe when we come back, somebody will click on that link and join the conversation. I will return with Joseph in just one moment.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
We're back, and look who's joining us
Hi,
now.
Gina. Is it
Hello.
Gina? Pronounced Gina, right?
Yes, it's Gina.
Yeah, even though you can't spell correctly.
It wasn't me. I'm only going with what it says on my birth certificate, dude.
Right. Well, I'm teasing you because look at my last name, right? Everybody wants to say Lenard. It's not French. It's Polish. It's Lenard. So, I have to tease you about the name thing because I, get the name thing all the time.
It's all good. I kind of have the same problem. They call me anything from Jeannie, Jenny, Joni.
It looks like Gina.
Not very often do people call me that, though. Everything else under the sun, even things that don't even start with a J. So, hey, you even works. So, whatever.
Well, in any event, to get us back on track, what are you thinking here, Gina? What do you want to ask or say, or what's on your mind?
Well, one of the first things I think is I really do like the way that Trump kind of did it separately. I think that personally, I agree with you guys there because, if he would have gone to the group thing, I think it would have just been a shit show. I think that, he would have been just, overrun and treated with disrespect and everything else. And I don't think he needs to be there. And I think by him doing it the way that he did it allowed him to be able to control the environment. And also exactly, the energy that was going on in the room. So I really think that was probably really smart of him. The other thing is, I like that Vivek guy. I really like what he has to say. He seems to be somebody that, if I was living in the States, I would definitely consider voting for, just because I just really seem to like what he has to say. However, I've also heard he is part of the WEF as well, so I don't know.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, did you not hear me say he's Soros funded?
Right.
Soros-backed fund groups. And his comments about divesting and defunding Israel. Same thing Rashida Taliban, a fellow Michiganian here in Congress, and Ilhan Omar say. That doesn't worry you. I was willing to support Vivek until the Soros thing and the attack on Israel came up. But again, he'd make a great cabinet member in the right slot. Can't support him for president. Knowing those things, does that change your position a bit?
Well, see, that's it, right? That's why I said, well, I don't know, because I mean, you know, he sure seems to do the great talk, right? So, you know, I mean,
he's smooth.
Yeah, he's extremely smooth. But I also like his answers too, though, right? Like, it's not the fact that he's just smooth. I like what he has to say. So, you know, I mean, it makes it really hard because, you know, I mean, I know that, you know, technically speaking, you know, the WEF is not something that we want to be supporting in any way, shape, or form.
I'm glad you mentioned.
The thing is maybe this one's obvious that he's been exposed and we know that, but how many others are and we don't know it. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I honestly couldn't say, well, you know, her or him. That woman that was on there, I mean, you know, I know that she has a lot of really great points. However, she's a lot to take. And I don't know if she would really be quite the right candidate for the position. You know, I mean, Pence, no. You know, I mean, I got my own opinion about him. And, you know, I mean, yeah, you know, he might have been able to, you know, get a few votes by a few of the answers and stuff that he's kind of put on the ball, you know, last night or whatever. But I just don't like what he has to say.
Well,
there was a couple of other ones in there. There was a bigger fellow. I can't remember his name. I don't like him very much. You know, but there's that I can't remember which guy it was, but there is one guy that I do like in there, but I can't remember his name for crying out loud.
Burgum makes some great points. Now, you said Vivek says some really good things. Yeah. Well, so does Tulsi Gabbard. And a lot of people are saying maybe Trump should pick Tulsi Gabbard as sort of a unity ticket. Well, Abraham Lincoln did that, and look how well that turned out for him. Tulsi Gabbard is a Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum stooge. I've met her when she was here stumping for Tudor Dixon for governor. Great person. Love her to death. Could never support her for president or VP. And that would be a red line for me. If Trump picks her, I could seriously consider having to do a write-in or an alternate party candidate because of Tulsi being a Klaus Schwab WEF stooge.
Right. And see, this is the thing. I mean, all right, so we know a few of them that are, but I mean, I've heard that a lot of them are. I don't know. Look, I mean, I don't have evidence to prove. You know what I'm saying? So that's the hard part here is, you know, I mean, despite the fact that these people are, you know, who they are, who they, you know, are putting themselves to being, if they're associated with the WEF, does that, I mean, in my opinion, I don't want anybody from the WEF representing Canada or the United States. I want Canadian or American people. I don't want these people who've come from these other countries that are representing, you know, other places or other, you know, I mean, it's just like, what's her name? Trudeau's friend, Freeland. Same thing. She, you know, as far as I'm concerned, she shouldn't be in the position that she's in. She's got ties to way too much. And I think that people who are in those kinds of positions should not have the family, history supporting those sorts of opinions. That's just my opinion.
Well, I've got to say one thing. They're politicians, and sometimes politicians, they network. They have to.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they can belong to a group, but not really be of the group. Do you call Frederick Porsche, who created the VW Beetle, the People's Volkswagen, for Hitler? He associated with the Nazis, but he really wasn't a Nazi, right? Do you remember the Council on Foreign Relations, which was kind of the boogeyman before World Economic Forum? Newt Gingrich was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but he was a great Speaker of the House, and I could have supported him for president because I don't think he was a CFO. He was in the group, but not a stooge for the group. So we have to be careful.
Well, I understand that because I know that, like, even in part of like the freedom groups, I might be in the groups, but I'm not of the groups, right? So, it's kind of one of those things where, I'm
guilt by association.
I float around. I can't be guilty of association because I'm like with 1,000 different groups. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't necessarily mean I support any of them or one of them. It just means that I'm trying to get as much information as I can about whatever the environment is. It's just like, the UN thing, I've been checking into like the UN stuff and, because of all this climate change, and I want to understand their perspective of things. And, I'm following teachers, for soil health and what they're trying to do there. And they are really onto some really great stuff. But my word, people hear you say the UN and they're just like, right? And so it's really hard. I mean, to try to explain to people that, just kind of like everything else. I mean, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, the UN, I'm glad you brought them up. I believe, because in the United States, there's calls for the United States to withdraw from the UN. Right. I think that is stupid. I get their point, but it's stupid. You don't give your enemies then more influence there. You've got to be part of it. I think we should demand the UN building move out of New York and be put in Jerusalem. Let all these people that are sponsoring terrorism go to the UN in Jerusalem and deal with the terrorism that a lot of them are supporting. Get them out of safe New York. Well, after 9/11, New York's not safe.
New York's safe? I doubt that.
I think you know. I think you know and get what I'm at, but I think we need to exert more influence on the UN, not less. The United States is paying most of the bills. We should have a hell of a lot more say then.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's only one way to do anything, and that's to get involved, literally. And put both your feet in. You gotta dangle your feet in the water. If you don't dangle your feet in the water, then you're not going to know what's going on. And if you don't know what's going on, then you're only understanding things from this level instead of dangling your feet in the water. And things are different in the turbulence in the water than it is up here.
Yeah.
So but it can all be part of the UN. But if you're only listening to what's going on up here and you're not paying attention to what's going on down there could be a lot of things going down here that are eventually going to end up here. Well, I would like to have something down in here. I want to have the say. I want to have, you know what I'm saying? Like I want to have the ability to be able to do something. And so for myself, that's one of the things that I personally have been doing and working on. So
you make a perfect point. If you want to influence it and change it, you can't usually do it from the outside.
No, you can't.
You have to. It's the same thing with people use the uniparty, bullshit label. No, there's a lot of us good Republicans, but yes, there's a lot of rhinos. Rhinos and fascocrats make up the deep state, not the uniparty. If you want the Republican Party to be better, get off your ass, become a delegate, go to the conventions, be involved. Stop screaming from the cheap seats. Yelling at the players, the coaches, the cheerleaders, and the water boy doesn't change the game outcome.
Not
You
at all.
gotta be on the field.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, it's just kind of like anything else, you know. I mean, like, I know this is subject. I sent Rick a video earlier about Abbotsford and what happened there at the school board meeting, and them having to, you know, the Sikhs and the Muslims. There was a few inside, but there was like thousands outside of the building, and that is, I think what needs to be done. I think that that's what we as people need to do. I think if we want change, we have to be the change, right? We can't expect George and Kevin and Bob and Rick and everybody else to do it. We have to look within ourselves and see what we can do personally, you know, I mean, on whatever level it is that we choose we can handle. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't have to be a big position. It doesn't have to be at all. You know, if you can be a parent that wants to, you know, step in and help in the classrooms, although I don't think they're really allowing that too much. When my daughter was young, I was in there every single day until the teacher in grade 5 told me I wasn't allowed anymore. And that's when they were changing the agenda. No, that's when they were changing the agenda, and they were doing a lot of things that I had some issues with. But I mean, up to that point, I was in the classroom, and I think that that's where parents should be. If they're capable of being there, I really do think that should be someplace that all of our, you know, we should have a right to be in our kids' classrooms.
Yeah, you make another perfect point that I need to expound upon. I'm sorry, there are some Trump cultists. You shall be known by your fruit, not your online virtue signaling empty rhetoric. There are people who think we elect Trump and then I can go back to sleep. No. You've got to get off your ass and be involved. We didn't get here overnight. It's going to take longer than overnight. And Trump is a man. He's not the second coming of Jesus Christ. It takes other people being involved. He can't do it all himself. Right?
Agreed.
You've got to get off your butt and be known by your fruits being involved.
Yes. Yeah, wherever you can. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, you know, just like the guy in that health, that Sean fellow that did the health, I don't know if you watched that program or not, but I mean, we have an opportunity to join their group. Why, you know, I would like to think and hope that, you know, a lot of us Mavericks have. But I think that there's probably a lot that probably didn't even bother to go check out the website. Well, I mean, everybody sits there and whines and complains that they want, you know, they want their health food and they want this and they want that, but they'll sit there and complain until they're blue in the face. But what actually gets done? We can't complain. We have to see where there's a problem and infiltrate and see what we can do to fix the problem.
Long term.
Yes.
One election ain't changing anything.
No.
You've got to get involved. You've got to stay involved. You can't just vote in an election and say, okay, now I get to go back to sleep. You being asleep, not you personally, you know what I mean. The generic you being asleep is what got us here. Right? The only thing necessary for evil prevail is good peoples do nothing. And a lot of you have been doing nothing.
For a very long time.
Right,
I mean,
that matters. Virtue signaling online doesn't amount to anything. You must do things that matter, like being a delegate, like going to committee meetings, going to council meetings, going to school board meetings, going to the party conventions to make sure you get better candidates. You can't wait till general election time in the United States. You must be involved before the primary.
That's right.
So you get a good candidate and you're not stuck with a rhino versus a fascocrat and holding your nose for the rhino, because at least the rhino you can agree with 50% of the time, whereas the fascocrat you're going to get 1% out of them.
Right. Right. So it looks like we've got a new newbie to the club here, but I don't see a face. So hi.
Hello.
Show yourself. Show yourself.
Yeah, I'm not going on camera.
I understand.
All right. So what do you have to say?
I find you people fascinating.
He's a bidummer.
I'm a lifelong Republican. No, I'm a lifelong Republican.
Oh, TDS. Okay.
I get TDS. I'm a rhino. I cannot fathom how anyone supports Trump. The guy is such a con man, such a charlatan. He wants to, if God forbid he gets back into office, Trump 2.0 will make Trump 1.0 look calm and measured. It will be such a shit show because he won't make the same quote unquote mistake that he made the first time around. The mistake he made the first time around, from MAGA's perspective, is that he actually had some adults in the room that knew what the hell they were doing. Now, all those people eventually quit or got fired, and he then said, they're so stupid and dumb and low lives, even though I only hire the best people.
Hey, he's not perfect. He hired some bad people.
He's not going to make that mistake again.
I hope not.
Yeah, there's going to be
hiring Bill Barr, who didn't prosecute a damn person.
There's not going to be any grown-ups in the room. The only people in the room will be true sycophants like Seb Gorka or Mike Flynn, or how about Mike Lindell for Secretary of Commerce. Every retarded nut job will be brought into that office.
Patriots versus deep state. You're clearly a deep state. Go along, get along. Just keep moving towards socialism, only slower.
But I was just going to say, if you get Mike Lindell in there, Secretary of Commerce, you could turn the White House into a flea market and have a garage sale in the front lawn.
Eliminate the debt.
That would be wonderful. I wonder what the employees of MyPillow are thinking, because he's taken all the money from his successful company, funneled it into all this bullshit election nonsense, and now that company's going off the cliff financially. What a shame.
Well, they choose to remain to work there. Of course, if they don't agree with the boss, they can leave and go somewhere else.
So can you guys, let's start with this. Can you explain to me, how is it that not everyone, but a lot of people who worked in the Trump administration hate him and say he's unfit for office? And don't tell me deep state, what about Hunter's laptop?
Let's avoid all that evidence stuff.
Please explain to me, because the January 6th hearings, I know kangaroo court, they're all BS, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, how do you explain the videos of the Capitol Police opening the electronic doors and waving them in?
How is it, these trials coming up, you know who's not going to be testifying? Nancy Pelosi, Al Sharpton, uber liberals. You know who's going to be testifying? Everyone from his inner circle. Can you explain that? How is it that he's going to end up in jail and all the evidence is not coming from the radical libs? It's going to come from his own people. Can you explain that to me?
Well, first of all, we don't know. We don't know whether or not he's going to end up in jail, and you're just speaking hearsay at this point. Sorry to say.
Based on all the evidence that's come out, whether it's the documents case, whether it's the January 6th case, whether it's the Atlanta case, how is it that all the evidence, everything, is from his own people? Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, the same way the idiot Ford lied about Kavanaugh to try to take him down. These are all deep staters that don't like that they won't be able to continue to enrich themselves if we drain the swamp.
Can I tell you something? The deep state is as real as the Easter Bunny. It's utterly ridiculous, the deep state.
And I suppose you don't think the military-industrial complex, it must be Santa Claus too, then, huh?
I think there's some validity to making an argument that Lockheed Martin and companies of that like they do gain financially when there's war, but no, there's no evil plot going on with an industrial war complex or whatever. Like take Ukraine, for example. You guys realize not supporting Ukraine is not exactly a very Republican position in pre-Trump. Since when did we decide that it's not America first, it's America alone? Since when did we decide that?
No, it's not.
When did we decide that one country invading another was acceptable and we'll just look the other way?
I don't think it's acceptable. I think that we shouldn't. I think that this has all got to end. I think that there's a lot of money that's being wasted.
I thought Zelensky and all his people, they're all Nazis, right? And they're all taking the money and buying Italian villas. Like your tax money and my tax money.
I know. And we can't seem to stop them. And see, this is the thing. We need to find some common ground.
Gina, that is fucking ridiculous. That's not. You can't detect my sarcasm. That's not going on. Okay, is every dollar accounted for? I'm sure it's not.
Sure.
But is Zelensky? Are they funneling young kids to pedophiles and all this bullshit and nonsense?
Every side in a war engages in propaganda. Every side. We do it. Russia does it. Ukraine does it. Everybody does it. Zelensky is corrupt. Biden is corrupt. Putin is corrupt.
How is Zelensky? What evidence of Zelensky being corrupt do you have?
Well, there are weapons on the dark web that were sent over there. So if you want to buy a rocket launcher, it's not too hard to find one.
Which may or may not be him directly, of course. Now, again, I personally know...
You just accused him of being corrupt.
I personally know some guys who are putting the pallets of cash onto cargo planes bound for Ukraine. I'm all for butter, bullets, and bread, not cash, because that money all funnels around. They're all corrupt.
That's right.
Look, without a doubt, in Eastern Europe and other parts of the world, there's corruption. Without a doubt. Okay, I'm not going to deny that. I'm not an idiot. But to say Zelensky, they're all Nazis, our money's going to, it's absurd. Zelensky should be applauded for, what that guy is doing is so brave. He's defending his people. He's standing up for himself and his country. This is raw aggression against their country. And you know why MAG is against Ukraine and support for Ukraine? I'll tell you why. Because Joe Biden was for it. And they couldn't say, oh, we're for it too.
No, I agree with you to agree there. Some of this is Biden derangement syndrome stupidity.
Why
Zelensky, I don't support Zelensky. I do support the Ukrainian people. I said earlier, 100 years of oppression of Russia on Ukraine. Are some of them wearing Nazi regalia? That's a fact. It's dumb, but I understand the history of my enemy is a temporary useful ally. They saw the Nazis as liberators from Russia. It's dumb. It's stupid. But I get what's going on there. Are they wanting to round up Jews and put them in ovens like a real Nazi? No. So no, we're not really supporting Nazis. We're supporting some people who don't have their head completely on straight. But none of that indeed changes the unprovoked invasion of a sovereign nation as Putin did, which is a pattern of behavior I pointed out earlier. Finland, Poland, Chechnya, Georgia, Ukraine, several times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why the MAGA world, well, I do understand. The MAGA world and the MAGA base is against us helping and funding Ukraine. Because
I'm not.
Okay, you're not, but you're the exception to the rule. You realize that.
No, this is that gray area. You're trying to paint with a broad brush.
Wait,
and the Republican Party is very divided on this.
Dude,
everyone I know supports Ukraine that are Republican.
Wait. Well, they must be Rhino Republicans then, because you don't understand. Like, if you disagree with Trump, MAGA's a religion.
Those are Trump cultists.
Well, the majority of the MAGA base are Trump cultists.
When you say Trump cultists, what do you mean specifically by that? Because, like, are you saying they're like QAnon people, or do you have a different take on that?
Look, the QAnon stuff is beyond crazy batshit. I mean, Jesus Christ, can it get any crazier and weirder than that nonsense? Okay. And then Trump is a cult of personality. You see these people in the Midwest and South. Look, I'm on the East Coast. I'll give you, I'm actually right down the street right now from the Orange Man. Okay. So that gives you a little clue from where I'm at. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, but where his base is, the people in the Midwest and the Deep South, not exclusively, but a lot of them, they think he's the greatest thing. You made a comment before, like he's not the second coming of Jesus. Well, a lot of MAGA people certainly think he is, literally. How fucking crazy is that?
Yeah. There's truth to that. There's some truth to that.
I've called them out several times during the show.
But you're making it sound like that those people are the fringe, and that's the base.
I think it is. I think he's kind of right, Joseph. I think a lot of his base is made up of people with that mindset.
They're nuts.
This time. Yeah.
They're nuts.
Is it Bob, or should we just call you Wannabe? I don't know what to call you, but do you think that the things have changed since the first time Trump ran? Because to me, the whole campaign now has a totally different feel, and I think that the makeup of his base has shifted a bit from it's different than it was when he came down that escalator the first time.
Well, here's where it's different. So I tell this story a lot. In the lead up to the 2016 election, the manager at the gym I went to at the time, I said, Trump's an idiot, Trump's a clown, he's a buffoon, blah, blah, blah. I can never vote for him. But Mike, the gym manager, said, Andy, you're so wrong. The guy is dangerous. And I said, Mike, give me a break. He's a clown. There's guardrails in place. There's checks and balances. It's a system. You can put the craziest person in the Oval Office. There's too many guardrails. The system won't allow them to drive the car off a cliff. Okay? I've now seen Mike was 100% right. The guy is dangerous, and that guy has deconstructed the guardrails. Trump is brilliant in how he undermines everything. And if you look at, if you read books or look at what are the 10 characteristics of an autocrat? Guess who checks off 9 out of 10 boxes? Okay. The media is corrupt. The DOJ is corrupt. The military is woke. The science community, I know more than the scientists. He undermines everything and then has the audacity to say, only I can fix it.
So
These
you
fucking
think the
idiots
woman-
around the
so
country
you-
believe this
So
shit.
you agree with Trump then? Trump still peddles the vaccine as if it's actually a vaccine. It's just a flu
Well,
shot,
again, I'm
and there
gonna
are
know.
more side
You're-
effects than benefits.
Well, I'm
so
sorry.
you
Des,
agree with Trump on that?
Oh yeah, no. The vaccine is like one of the few good things that Trump did, and how
It's the
ironic.
dumbest thing he did. It's another.
We have to
another
stay off that topic, or we're going to get banned on
All right,
YouTube. Okay.
All right, I won't go down. We're going to disagree. But without getting into the vaccine, it just illustrates. Look, I get it. Okay. Look, I'm in my mid-50s. Okay, so I remember, network news at 6:30 on ABC, CBS, and NBC. Okay, different world today. We can all get information from a zillion different sources, and that there's a lot of good to that, but there's a lot of bad, because every nut job in the world, okay, Alex Jones, the Alex Joneses of the world pre-internet, they were in Times Square giving flyers out, and you took a flyer from them and you laughed and you threw it in a trash can. Because of the internet, the Alex Jones of the world have a voice. And not just do they have a voice, but all the other retards like them can congregate together and share their stupid ideas. Okay?
Who are you supporting? If you're not supporting Trump, who are you supporting?
Who am I supporting?
Yeah.
So if it's Biden, if it's Trump, for all I care, the Democrats could nominate a bag of dog shit, and I will vote for the bag of dog shit.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're for high inflation, high gas prices,
No,
letting
no,
forests burn because
no one
we
is,
refuse to manage
no one is,
them.
no one is for that. I'm not an economist, okay? I have an advanced degree. I'm not a dummy, all right? But I'm not an economist. I think it's very hard to say, well, all the inflation and all the high gas prices are purely because of Joe Biden. Like, that's kind of a simplistic way
We
to
were
put it.
energy independent until Biden shut it all down.
I'm-
Fact, not feeling.
Look, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, there's different factors. Like, take inflation. It's not like we're the only country experiencing inflation. The whole friggin' world is experiencing it. Is Biden responsible for the inflation in Belgium right now?
Well, partly.
Well, again, I'm not an economist. I can't speak to this topic very detailed.
He's responsible because the U.S. has the world default currency, and they printed so much money and thrown it around. That's
okay, here's my
And
take.
I won't defend Trump on that. Did
All right,
you hear me say Trump allowed too much spending?
Here's my take, all right? Let's say Biden is 100%, 1,000% responsible for inflation and the high gas prices. I don't think he is, but I'll give you that. I'd still vote for him over Trump, because with Trump, democracy will be gone. This whole redemption, this whole deep state, he's going to round people up. General Milley wants to execute. I listened to Seb Gorka this morning say that John Kelly and Mattis and Tillerson, they should all be put on trial for treason. We're going to, if Trump gets back into office, we will see shit like we've never seen before. In addition, let me ask you this. If Trump got back into office, let's pretend he's not 77. Let's pretend he's 57. Why would he ever leave?